right, we are on the final stretch for this. Mr. Redman's focus throughout his career has been on the demand reduction side of marijuana use, meaning his focus has been on prevention and education efforts, so there'll be less demand for marijuana. He's an internationally known speaker. He has received numerous awards for his work, and he consults with the United Nations and several other organizations. We're very pleased to have him here as our concluding speaker on California and our state of affairs.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, Sue and Patrick. Thanks. Glad to be back to San Jose. It's a beautiful town. I was here 6 months ago, and have some family members here who I haven't seen, but I'll see if I can stop by. I see that a lot of you are still here. Thank you. I better be good. And I'm a little worried, however, because I'm a few months away from retirement, and for those of you who have been retired or have gotten there, sometimes your politically correct filter starts to disintegrate. So I'm worried about how I'll answer questions, or what I might say, or go off track here. But I'll do my best. I understand we have, 4 hours left? So that you can get your credits. We'll see if I can stay within that. Although I've known to talk for 8 hours. All right, so in Colorado, I had been talking a lot about drug policy. I've been on the NGO Committee for Global Drug Policy. I've been a delegate there at the United Nations UNODC since 2008. And there's a lot of conversation around this issue, not only marijuana, but all drugs. And the issue is a balance issue. It's kind of a balance between individual rights and the community rights, and where does that land? We have sometimes ferocious debates on it, but and you take a look at some countries that have really harsh draconian laws, drug laws, and they have low use rates because in some places a pound of marijuana gets you the death penalty, or in some countries selling drugs you get your hand cut off. We consider those draconian laws that probably shouldn't be on the books. But there are other countries where they have very liberal laws and there are high use rates. And the question is, where is that balance in the human rights era in drug policy? And it's a constant question, a constant challenge with us. So, and that's the same debate today as we take a look at the marijuana issue, whether it's here in California or Colorado or around the country, around the world, the same issue applies. Does the government have a right to tell me what I as an individual can put in my own body? How do we protect the community? How do we protect the children within it? All of these questions are constantly debated. And these are questions that we need to take a look at as we start to look at our policies in California. I was asked a few months ago to go to Israel to talk about marijuana. And I had three talks I was supposed to do. I did the first two, and then I saw a flyer that was no bigger than this on a table. It had my picture on it and a lot of Hebrew written on it. I couldn't read Hebrew, so I said, "What does this say?" And it said, "Well, come tomorrow night and listen to John Redman talk about how to stop legalization of marijuana in Israel." I went, "Really? I'm not sure I should or can, but why not?" So I talked to an audience about the size of this room, and I said, I've never done this before, but I need to ask you, I'm a little stunned why anyone in Israel would want to legalize marijuana when everybody around you wants to see you dead. And I said, "Didn't they build some tunnels last year, dig some tunnels, Hamas?" And this woman said, "Yes, they built 3. I said, "Well, didn't they try to come through one of those tunnels?" And she said, "Well, actually, they did come through, and we stopped them. I said, well, why would you want to be stoned when that happens? I don't get it. And she said, because of what we've heard about the incredible success of legalization of marijuana in Colorado and how well it has worked. That's what I said. Oh my. I happened to have some slides from Colorado, and I pulled them up really quick, and I said, allow me to show you what's going on in Colorado. And so we went through it. And I said, now that I've shown you this, what do you think? You know, they were teaching me some Hebrew words. I said, you have a Hebrew word for this? And my handler, who was there, who spoke perfect English, she stood up and she said, yes, Mr. Redman, we have a Hebrew word for that. In Israel, in Hebrew, we call it bullshit. I said, you know, it's amazing. We have a very similar word in English. I think about 2,000 years ago, we were one tribe. And with that, we had a great discussion. And armed with that information, they did stop legalization in Israel at that time. Of course, it's coming back, it's cropping up again, unintended, but that's the way these things go. After Colorado legalized marijuana in 2012, I was invited to this legal conference in a state that will remain nameless. I was invited there. We had to present a paper on policy, and I had my paper. I got there, and I realized it was kind of like that Sesame Street song, you know. One of these things is not like the other. One of these things is not the same. Because there was myself and 3 other people who were kind of not supportive of this new policy change, and the rest, it was like a celebration. And so I went up to the guy in the conference who was putting it together, and I said, I asked a question, why were we invited? And he said, for the illusion of balance. I said, I got it. So on the tomato catcher, he said, pretty much. When I got up there, it was very interesting, the conference, and I kind of tore up my paper. There was a guy that I had debated for many years, and I said, you know, I grow tired of the debate. We seem to be screaming at each other from these extremes, and we never come to any conclusion. I said, you know, to the gentleman who had a legal background, I said, you know, I would rather talk to you about criminal justice reform than marijuana, because when we talk about legalizing marijuana and saying that it's going to fix the criminal justice system, it's a fallacy. It's a lie. It's a ruse. If we were to legalize marijuana overnight in every state in the country, it would not really change much. As a matter of fact, marijuana is a small part of all people that are in prisons for drug laws. As a matter of fact, if you take every single crime for drugs, from cocaine to heroin to ecstasy to marijuana, and you made every single one of them legal, it would only account for 20% of the entire criminal justice system. And so you'd still have an 80% issue. Is talking about marijuana going to really, truly solve another issue of criminal justice? It's not. So I would rather, if we're going to have those conversations, then let's have those conversations and not put it into a debate of legalization of marijuana, which we're so wont to do. And it boggles my mind at times when we talk about it. Another issue that seems to kind of frustrate me is, as we talk about all of the things that legalizing marijuana will do, overnight, like reduce marijuana use rates in youth. It will put coffers into our state budget and solve our financial crisis in the state of California. It will fix the criminal justice system, and overnight will end the drug cartels. Which I'm still stunned at Jim Gerhardt's commercial there for legalization of marijuana with all of the money going down to Mexico. That just, any of you guys had the same kind of, I was like, well, isn't that racist? I mean, whatever. Just, again, bizarre, things you take out of the context of the dialogue of marijuana or drug policy, and you stick it anywhere else, and it would be a bizarre conversation. We stick it into marijuana conversation, it seems to be normal, and that we can do that and talk about it. So again, just, bizarre. But if we want to talk about drug cartels, when we talk about drug policy at the United Nations doesn't even consider, they don't call drug cartels, they call them criminal enterprises. Because as we all know, drug cartels don't simply get their money from drugs. It's kidnapping, extortion, murder, human trafficking, as well as drugs. So they will make money off of whatever they can, and legalizing marijuana isn't going to stop their illicit activity. And when we take a look at what we're, doing, or what we've done in Colorado, we hear what people in Israel were talking about because of what they had heard in Colorado. And then I remember when I was in Colorado and people were talking about legalization, asking me questions, I asked them why they were considering that. They said because of the great success that they had heard about legalization of marijuana in Amsterdam, which was laughable because of all the problems they've had with that in Amsterdam, where it lowered use rates. Well, yeah, actually a few years after they implemented the law, use rates went down a little bit, but over the years, use rate tripled in Holland. Lower, it went up. And what had happened was that eventually the criminal enterprises of France and Germany took over some of those coffee shops and drug trafficking in Holland, to where now 85% of the drugs that come to Europe come through Amsterdam because of the corruption that comes with these types of policies, which now exist in Colorado and happen at wherever these laws come along. It's one of the things that occurs. So if we're going to have this conversation or debate or whatever you want to call it, we have to do it from a wide range of topics to really understand what's going to happen at the end. And I think that if we talk about it rationally, good people will do good things. But what I don't like, and what frustrates me, is to see these bumper sticker messages coming out that sound really great on the surface, but in actuality, when we realize this, then it's major social problems. And then, in terms of regulation, to think that we actually could regulate this. And, I heard somebody up here saying, no, I think we can. Well, what does that mean? How are we really going to regulate it? Because the conversations that we have when we talk regulation in any context is only a part of full regulation, right? We talk about regulation in terms of land use ordinances. In other words, we're only going to have so many, and they're only going to be over here and not there. We talk about regulation in terms of maybe hours that we'll sell marijuana, or whom we will sell it to and whom we won't sell it to. 18 and up, 21 and up, whatever it is. But I've not yet heard out of any of the conversations where we're going to regulate the most important part, the product. Doesn't happen. Because to do that, I've never heard Colorado create a Colorado Food and Drug Administration. Because that's who regulates foods and drugs in the United States. States regulate the marketing and transportation of it, the sales of it. They don't market the product. They don't regulate the product. That's the FDA. So in California, I haven't ever heard where we're talking about a California Food and Drug Administration where we're going to regulate the product so that people know what's in it. That I haven't seen. So as we look at all of these issues and all of these questions, I think that we really need to take a step back, take a really hard look, and ask some very tough questions. And with that, we'll go on to the marijuana impact report. We decided to do one in California based on all of these questions. You know, was the marijuana, how had the medical marijuana legalization in California, how is that done? How has that worked for our communities? We had asked Chelsea to come to San Diego and from Tom Gorman because they had experience with this, and maybe we could replicate what they had done. We didn't realize how challenging that would be, although Chelsea, you did warn us. It's very difficult, very challenging to take all of this, even though they're existing pieces of data, to get it, bring it all together, try to make some sense out of it, put it in a chart that makes sense. I mean, I have one chart. We haven't finished it. We have a few days left. There's one chart I was going to put in just to show you how complex it is, because there's this one chart that has so many bars and so many colors, I can't even make sense out of it. So you have to take it, break it apart, and show it in different ways, but it's a challenge. But we went ahead and did it. So what's the impact of medical marijuana? As I had said yesterday, there are really kind of two areas of law that I tend to take a look at this. And one is, from early 1975 to 2009, where there was a number of what I call passive laws or decriminalization laws, where in 1975, Senate Bill 95 said that it was signed into law, saying that an ounce of marijuana or less was a misdemeanor. It was really a special class of misdemeanor where it was expunged from your record after 2 years. And it wasn't even a real arrest, it was a paper arrest. So if you got cited for it, all that happened was your name was taken down on a ticket, that was given to the court put a prosecutor on it and a defending attorney on it, public defender. You were guilty and you paid a $100 fine at max, that was it. And so you couldn't get arrested unless you wanted to. That's been around since 1975, ounce or less. Prop 215 was really so that people could have an affirmative defense in court, in state court or district court. And then, but that kind of started to get out of control. And so in 2004, Senate Bill 420 was passed to try to put some stipulations on it and try to control it, but it really couldn't, because that vote was a proposition, 215, and it could only be changed by a vote of the people. So really what happened was it created the county medical marijuana ID card program. So looking forward, when there were some signals from the federal government that maybe they would let them experiment with this, you got, by 2009, there was an explosion of marijuana dispensaries in Los Angeles. We had almost 1,000 there. It became a huge problem. It was out of control. They tried to put some initiatives in place and some ordinance in place to try to deal with it. They were looking at over 200 lawsuits once they tried to put some of those things in place. Eventually, in 2010, I believe it was for Senate Bill 1449, which Governor Schwarzenegger signed into law, so that it really became an ounce or less was an infraction. There was no criminal penalty at all for it. And then there were these, the Medical Marijuana Regulation and Safety Act of 2016, which were 3 bills that came together, where Democrats and Republicans alike on both sides of the aisle worked very diligently to try to put some control, some standards to what was going on. And that's pretty much, but as we look at the initiative that's coming up, a lot of what those assembly members and politicians worked on for a long time is erased. And so there's some real frustration right now with the current legislature on what the work that they had done and what's about to happen. There's also people in the industry, the marijuana industry, that isn't supportive of it. Some growers and even certain shops. So that we've gotten calls from. So it isn't kind of a fait accompli. There's a lot of questions that are happening. So, because of these questions, what we wanted to find out, what was really happening. So we're creating this medical marijuana impact report for California. These are the chapters that we're going to have a section. Section 1 is going to be the science of marijuana, some of the things that you've heard about over the last 2 days here. The California youth marijuana use rates, what's really happening with our children, and California schools, what's happening in the schools, the marijuana use age 18 to 25, so those the young adults who are still vulnerable because their brains are developing, and then it's also after 25 that you'll see that the rates drop off drastically. Marijuana-related emergency department visits and hospitalization admissions, what's happening there, treatment, or people are actually going into treatment because of marijuana, impaired driving, what's happening here, the diversion of marijuana, that one of the things that was in the Ogden memo, in the Cole memo, where the federal government said that if marijuana was being diverted from legal states to other states, where states had legalized it, then they would do something about it. And then there is a chapter on extraction labs. That's becoming a huge public health problem in our communities with these labs blowing up. Environmental impacts of marijuana in California. Some of the things that you had seen today are in this report. And then finally, some explanation of CBD, THC, and hemp that Alice Mead talked about today in the report. The report, my hope is it comes out in the next week or so. So be looking for it. All right. So one of the things that's disturbing to us is that we now have marijuana use rates in our youth at 8th, 10th, and 12th graders is higher than cigarettes. So while cigarettes, we've done a great job in California on tobacco smoking. It isn't cool to smoke. It isn't safe to smoke. There's a high risk to it. Nobody likes it. And yet, we're kind of okay with marijuana. And the kids are seeing that as well. I always thought that a good commercial for marijuana would be where a guy comes up to a guy leaning on a signpost and he says, "Hey, you got a cigarette?" And the guy leaning against the signpost said, "What are you, crazy? Look at the sign. This is a no smoking area. It's right by a park. Look at the children playing, the picnics, the birthday parties. You can't smoke cigarettes here. What are you, crazy? That's disgusting." And he goes, "You're right. Got a joint?" He goes, "Oh, well, yeah, here." It seems to me that that's kind of where we're going, but with our normalization. Perception of great risk for youth. We tried to make sure that our data had national data compared to California data so we could compare it. So in the dark blue is California, and the light blue is national. So you can see that both are going down, but the perception of harm or risk, which is a bad thing as that perception of harm goes down. But you can see that California's is going down at a greater rate than, at a lower rate than the national average. In terms of past 30-day use, for those of you in prevention, you know that that's our definition of current users. If you've used in the last 30 days, you're a current user. So you can see that grades 7th, 9th, and 11th, where that is a higher use rate in the older population. So what we try to do, what we like to do, is realizing that prevention is a youth issue. If you can take the earlier ages and you can lower them, then eventually the older ones will lower over time. And that seems to not be happening. It seems now with marijuana that that you've got the 9th and 11th and college kids raising up, and that they're dragging the younger up with them. So that is a concern to us. Now, expulsions are going down, which I think is a good thing. Because we don't, when we take a look at drug policy, we have to look at some of the failures of our drug policy and understand that it hasn't always been successful. We haven't always done good things. And I think that zero tolerance is not always a good thing. So if a kid gets caught for smoking a joint and gets expelled forever, and he starts to learn out on the streets, that's not a good thing. And one of the things that the superintendent of schools for the state of California has given a mandate to is, let's not kick them out, let's keep them in school so they're not expelling children. That's good. However, the question becomes, then what's going on? Because there wasn't any guidelines or platforms that said, this is what we're going to do with them. So are they getting the counseling they need? Are they being maybe separated from the vulnerable populations of the schools so that those children don't become users or are negatively impacted? And there's been no rollout of how it should go. It's just kind of every school for itself or every school district for itself. And that is a major concern to us. So we're trying to find out what's happening in school. This is just the start. This is the prevalence of past month use nationally versus California in all age groups. So you can see that as the national average has gone up, California has gone up as well, but at a higher rate. This I thought was slightly interesting for people. This is in blue on the left is the national average. Then you have their California average, which is in green. Then if you take a look at southern in gold, then central in gray, and then northern California in dark blue. So northern California has the highest. I'm shocked at that one. San Francisco, I don't know. All right, so you saw this one from Chelsea. We wanted to do our own. It's the same data, but really what we did, the differences, and so you can see this is 2013 versus 2014. You can see the two, all 50 states. In green, she showed you those. In red, it's medical marijuana. Blue is the non-medical marijuana states. In gold is California. This was 13, which we were 19th in the nation, and then now we're 10th. So we're going up. It's going higher. And that's in 1 year that's happened in California. So, moving very quickly, past month use, age 18 to 25, the highest users, we're higher than the national average. This is emergency department admissions. We are going up drastically with any related cannabis abuse. Meaning, that's not if you smoke a joint and you have an episode, you go in. That's if you, anything, you smoke marijuana and you ran your motorcycle into a tree or whatever. Any related issue, accident, whatever. This is primary diagnosis only. So in other words, these are the emergency department admissions for marijuana only. You can see where we had a proliferation of marijuana stores. That's where all of this changes. When you start to put point of sales in the community, it changes. This is before and after. This is the exposures to children in hospitals. Remember, Colorado is a state of 5 million people. We are a state of 38 million. So our numbers are going to be higher, just proportionally. But you can see that as we introduce marijuana dispensaries, it's available in the community, then we see a higher rate of children that are going to hospitals. This is who's in treatment for marijuana. It's mostly 12 to 17-year-olds. Now, some people say, well, that's because of the criminal justice system. Well, take a look at the private treatment facilities. 97% of one. There's just one in San Diego that we looked at. 97% of the youth in there for marijuana. That had nothing to do with the criminal justice system. I swear I'll do 2 minutes and we'll be done. I'm not Marilyn Hustis, I just don't have that presence, but yes. So, while all car crash fatalities were going down by 2009, in 2010, as you can see then with the proliferation of marijuana shops, it started to go up. Now this is all car crashes. So you have to take a look at the next one. This is simply marijuana. So that's the reason for the rest, for all car crashes going up, because we have this huge one. What we're looking into, why this disparaging the one in 2012. Not sure why it was so low, but we'll check into that. Now, this is last two slides, just so that you're ready to come up and take me on. And the last two slides, this is the seizures of marijuana. So if you take a look, and all we did was those over 100, so the rest were so small. These were the top 6 states that had diversion. In other words, marijuana going out of their state. Washington, Arizona, Texas, Colorado, Illinois, and California being the number 1. We are the breadbasket for marijuana growing in the country. It's the Central Valley. They grow tons of it, literally, and out it goes. Some of that goes out of state because they make money. So again, one of the things we were supposed to look at federally was that diversion of marijuana from a state that considered it legal to states where it wasn't, and we're the worst. Then when you take a look at the labs, I remember when we started dealing with lab issues, there were meth labs. Now, 79% of the labs, the explosions that are happening are marijuana extract labs. And we took a look at just a few of them in the first quarter of the year, and it was $9 million just for the initial displacement costs and for the families that had been moved. It's tons of money. But anyway, these are the problems that we're looking at and we're not discussing. And if we're really going to have this robust conversation in a democratic free speech world, then let's talk about it. Let's talk really hard about it. Instead, what I don't like to hear all the time is there's like 2 arguments. Either the data's fully not out yet, well, I think it is, or, well, that data's just not real. It's not true. It's false. And that's the only arguments we hear. So I thank you for staying. We will put this out. I'll be around for questions and comments for as long as you need me, because my flight's not out till 6 tonight. So I'm here if you're here, but no debates. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Redman. We appreciate your comments. We're going to call Chelsea up to the stand for just 1 or 2 minutes to answer a question that's very common, and we just want to answer this once. You don't have to wait until it comes out via email.
The question that was posed, there was a Healthy Kids study that came out of Colorado that has been publicized throughout California recently, and it involves basically at least the interpretation of the study is that there has been no increase in youth use of marijuana in the state of Colorado, or I've also heard it spun as there has actually been a decrease in youth use of marijuana since legalization in Colorado occurred. And Rocky Mountain High has actually deconstructed that study, and they put out a press release as it relates to that Healthy Kids study, and it's also part of their official publications too. So I asked Chelsea to give us just a quick, 60-second, no more than 2-minute, just analysis of that, and then you can contact her if you want additional information.
Basically, I can't get enough of this stage, so I asked him to let me back up. Really briefly, we choose not to use the Healthy Kids Colorado. There are a number of things going on with that. It's questionably statistically accurate in how they did it. They always tout that they have a huge sample size, but they have a very low response rate. And the people from the national survey, the YRBS, that have talked to us have said it's really not done very well, and that they made it larger when they told them not to, and that it kind of just imploded. It doesn't include the 2nd largest school district in our state. It also doesn't include the city and county for the 3rd largest school district in our state. It's missing that. And then briefly, when you look through it, even though these articles came out saying that Colorado youth use rate is flat, it actually says in there that the overall use increased 8%. They just say that's not statistically significant. And then that's all 4 grades. If you break it down a little bit further, seniors increased 19% and juniors increased 15%. We also have some of our mountain towns where those regions increased 90% in their senior populations. And the Denver public schools have about 1/3 of their students who currently use marijuana. So that is online, same place you can go to find any of our reports. Our response to that is there as well, and we put all the data on there for you. We break it down by the counties like they have it online. So I think that hopefully answers it.
I just thought that was an important question to answer because you're going to be seeing that, and you've already probably heard about that study here in California because it's an important study that that is being disseminated through media and various interest groups on the topic of marijuana. And Rocky Mountain High has looked at it, they deconstructed it, they are certainly pointing to some of the issues pertaining to that particular study. So, with that being said, this is just our final comments for the conference. I wanted to thank everyone for coming. John Redman has obviously the toughest spot to speak in this conference, to be the last. You've heard from 28 speakers, 30 presentations over the last day and more than a half day of presentation. Our goal was to give you fact-based information, to bring in speakers from all over the country that are currently dealing with issues pertaining to marijuana. And these are speakers that don't come to California regularly. We invited them to come out. Most of them came out on their own dollar, their own dime, to present to you today. They're government employees, many of them. They work for different government agencies throughout the country, or just research institutes like Harvard Medical School for Dr. Bertha Madreras. So it was really important that we bring these people because they don't come to California and they have important information to present. So I really hope that you received as much as we were hoping to give to the community of Santa Clara County, Silicon Valley, the Bay Area, and so that you can take this information and disseminate this information. If at any point in the future you're looking for individuals to come speak to your groups, your community groups, civic groups, government agencies, and you need the contact information for any of the individuals that spoke at this conference, do not hesitate in giving me a call. I also can come and present some of the information that's been presented. I don't really want to just regurgitate information that someone else worked on, studied. Our goal was to bring together individuals that are currently doing the research and investigating. But I'm happy as a prosecutor to come to your agency, your group, and present to you the information that I have firsthand knowledge about. So if that's something you're interested in, don't hesitate in giving me a call, or I can put you in contact with the people who presented at this conference. With that being said, thank you very much for coming, and I'm going to turn the microphone over to Sue for her concluding comments.
I just want to thank each one of you for coming, and hope you'll each remember that these speakers have been very generous with us with their information, and we invite you to generously share it as you go back home. And remember that each of us play an important role in this work, and it's our collective impact that will make a difference in how California looks. So thank you so much for joining us. And I, likewise, would be happy to share all these contacts with you. I've done a number of presentations, and it includes a lot of this information, so I'd be very happy to come and help any of you as well. Thank you so much for coming.